Welcome, everybody, to Pushing the Envelope, Buddhism, Cannabis, and LSD, a talk with Will Johnson. I'm Christopher Sunyata, and I'm excited to introduce Will Johnson. He's been a Buddhist practitioner since 1972, a Rolfer who personally trained with Ida Rolf, an author of 15 books and much more. Most recently, an updated 20-year anniversary edition of The Posture of Meditation came out. Other recent titles are Breathing a Spiritual Practice, Experiencing the Presence of God, Eyes Wide Open, Buddhist Instructions on Merging Body and Vision, and Cannabis in Spiritual Practice, which we're going to be diving into a lot more today. I'm thrilled that embodiment and embodied practice are being spoken of in so many places today. You can find many people talking about and teaching different themes around embodiment. Will's a pioneer in this area, and he's been teaching and speaking about embodiment training for over 25 years. I'll read what he says about this work from his website. Embodiment training is a path of awakening that views the body as the doorway, not the obstacle to personal growth and spiritual transformation. Through combining the orientation of Western somatic therapy with Eastern meditational practices, embodiment training leads you to the discovery of your natural embodied state. Like the Dochen Ripa and the Buddhist Sunyata, the embodied state has been described like coming home at last. The practices mix bliss, the complete surrender to the deep energies of the body, with presence, immaculate mindfulness, and lead you on a journey of unfolding that takes you ever deeper into the very center of your center. Today's talk will help set the scene for a deeper exploration that myself and Will are teaching March 26 and 28, Cannabis and Spiritual Practice, a Tantric Experiential Inquiry. In this online program, you'll be led through 2 days of guided practices by myself, providing an embodied framework for on the third day when Will's going to be joining the program and lead us into adding the sacrament of cannabis to practice. To find out more about this program and to register, please go to my website, www.sunyata.info, and click on events and workshops. And there are links there within that webpage that you can sign up or request more information about the program. So everyone, please welcome me in welcoming my dear friend and teacher, Will Johnson. Take it away, Will.
Thank you, Christopher. Hello, everyone. I'm Will Johnson. It was interesting listening, to what you were saying. And, I've done a lot of writing all through my life. And for the majority of the books that I've written, it's all about the role of the body in spiritual practice and mostly in sitting meditation practice. One of the things that I strongly focus on and bring to the practice of sitting meditation is that the practice is about sitting. It's about introducing a few very, very simple principles, exploring them. And they're all very somatic, body-oriented principles. The notion of playing around the central, upright, vertical. This notion of relaxing through the whole entire body. And then the most radical piece that I bring to the Dharma conversation is my insistence that if you are to be truly and deeply relaxed, you have to keep allowing spontaneous, continuous, amoeba-like, very natural motions to occur, frankly, at every joint in the body in response to the force of the breath that wants to move, pass through the body, not unlike how a wave moves through a body of water. And as I think we're going to see in our time here together, that last piece, which is the most radical piece that I personally bring to the Dharma conversation, my insistence that these altogether natural, spontaneous movements just want to occur in a body that's let go and in a body that's relaxed. We're going to see how that frankly radical piece that I bring, why is it radical? Because mostly when I sit in front of a group, hall of sitting meditators, mostly what I see is everybody sitting some version of kind of like this. frozen, absolutely frozen, absolutely still, as though our notion somehow, and as we're going to talk about it is reinforced by the orientation towards sitting practice that's coming over from Asia. But this notion that the practice is about becoming like a stone garden statue of the Buddha, and it just isn't. And that kind of very rigid, frozen stillness, it creates so much pain, so much discomfort, especially for long hours or long days in Zen sesshin or Vajrayana Dhatuns or Vipassana retreats. And it absolutely stops breath in its tracks. And I also see now this holding still, this frozen place, fuels the already out of control parade of unbidden and random thoughts in the mind that we like to pull the plug on. That's been the motivation for many of us to become attracted to things like the Dharma. So I think we're going to see really that this most radical piece that I insist on in the Dharma that's coming over from Asia is perhaps related to the Western opening to and proliferation, the exploration of different kinds of substances. Today, I'm probably just going to talk a bit about cannabis and LSD to support the opening that wants to occur through these extraordinary practices. Those of you who know me know I have great reverence in my heart, such gratitude for this 2,500-year tradition of wisdom teachings that comes out of the Buddhist world. I view, however, the form that the sitting practices, the orientation to this form, what they're coming over to our shores from Asia, I view them as having gotten rigid, dry, brittle, patriarchal, militaristic even. And, this is a shift that I strongly believe Western Dharma, as it creates its own, in a sense, Western version of these teachings, is going to address and reform. The form that the sitting practice is in right now. It's as though the Dharma somehow had painted itself into this corner of frozen stillness. And that quality of frozen stillness is antithetical to the natural, awakening that wants, that wants to occur. It was my sons who put me up to writing the Cannabis book. They've seen me over. They know me better than anybody. My youngest son Jamie was just here visiting, and it was wonderful to be with adult children because there's the enjoyment, there's the fun, but this guy sees what goes on with his dad. Oh, he also sees dad's foibles. But they were very insistent to me many, many years ago. Is Dad, you enjoy cannabis. And they watched and saw how it entered into my movement practices, my spontaneous movement practices. We'll talk about this in just a moment. I said, Dad, if you don't write that book, you'll check out in this life and you'll feel like you missed something, that you held back, that you were cowardly about speaking your truth. Now, at every single retreat that I've ever taught, every single large retreat, I get at least one, and generally more than one, participant in the retreat kind of coming up to me, kind of pulling up my sleeve, sometimes almost a little tearfully, and saying, Mr. Johnson, could I please speak with you privately? And inevitably, the conversation is, cannabis works for me in my life. I use it judiciously. I use it in ways that feel responsible. I use it in ways that evoke creativity. I use it in ways that awaken my body. I use it in ways to get clear of the veneer, surface stuff of the mind and the egoic perspective. It works for me, and I'm so drawn to the traditional practices. And I'm very, very drawn to a particular Sangha. I get shamed, not overtly, but there is this element that somehow I'm ostracized a bit. I get shamed, like it's so contravenes the most traditional Dharma approach, and especially the approach when it comes to the precepts we're also going to be talking about. And with every one of those people, I say the same thing. I say, look, as a teacher, I do not care what you do. I care about how you're doing what you're doing when you're doing it. And, I was a child of the 60s. Cannabis came into my life. It was God's medicine. It opened me in ways. It revealed to me so many of the inauthentic kind of, personas that I was running at the time, and helped me begin the practice of going inside and dropping away, softening the surface veneer. It led me to the Dharma. I'm also a musician. I've been a musician all my life. In my early 20s, I lived and studied with a North Indian veena player, very strange, very, very old Indian stringed instrument. We lived in San Francisco, of all places. A big, huge gourd right up here in your shoulder, another here. It's like you're inside this sound chamber. My teacher comes out of the Shiva tradition. We'll be talking about Shiva again in just a few minutes here. And for him, this was Shiva's music. He told me about a period of his life when the music was really blossoming in his life. I think his official title was, he was the Nirayana astrologer and teacher of instrumental music to the royal family of Junagadh, India. And he lived for a couple of years, kind of what we think of as a rock and roll lifestyle, because the current Maharaja was a young guy who didn't just want him as sort of an ornament in the court, connected with him and wanted to learn the veena. For 2 straight years, he said they virtually missed not a night. He would wake up at 4 p.m, go to, clean, bathe, go to court. The food would be brought out, the drinks, and the hookah would be brought out. And they would invoke Shiva. As we will see, cannabis is Shiva's sacrament. They would invoke Shiva with hookah, and they play music all night. And as he said, that's when his music opened. In truth, I'm much the same. I will not even pick up the guitar. The music that I play is largely very improvisation within Indian scales. It's just how it works. So I talk to those people in retreat and I say, look, drop any kind of guilt. Let it go. This work is about exploring. It's about self-discovery. It's not about fitting yourself into a cookie cutter mold and becoming a good Buddhist person, if there's anything wrong with, Buddhism, the people that are attracted to it, such wonderful hearts. I want to give them permission to let go and to set them free from this, frankly, from my perspective, insane rigidity that has entered into the approach to sitting meditation practices. And so I talked to them much of like how I wrote in that book. If you use cannabis, okay? Let me be upfront about this right at the beginning. You do not need to use cannabis. I am not someone who is promoting cannabis use or LSD use in conjunction with sitting meditation. I promote personal responsibility. You have got to make that decision for yourself. There are a huge number of people, frankly, for whom these things do not work, and there haven't been enough grounding practices to let them use the catalyzing effect of some of these substances without just going off even further into their minds. And I've had lots of conversations with Buddhist teachers about this. And I know some of them in particular say, no, they don't like the students of theirs who are cannabis users, because they'll often come to retreat and they'll be kind of, spaced out in exalted, perhaps, higher conditions of their mind, but still within their mind. And they see the stuckness that occurs. I see that as well. What I also see, though, is that for some of us, especially for those of us that in a sense are moving more into what might be called the somatic current of Western Dharma, which is going to be one of the major contributions that the West is going to make to the history of Buddhism. There are many of us, and I'll talk about my personal experiences, that it seems to work well. So there were lots of tears of relief talking to those people, because there's such a guilt that gets laid on substance exploration and spiritual communities, not unlike, in my experience, the kind of 1950s straight world's attitude towards gays. Oh, shame, blame, guilt, ostracism. It's time we need to let that go. And we are just in the process of developing a uniquely Western Buddhism. Every time the Buddhism migrated, it became different. It entered into new territories. It incorporated the prevailing issues, psychological needs of the people in that new territory into the body of the teaching without losing any of the essence. So from northern India goes into South Asia. It's one sweep. It leaves a trace there. It goes up into China. It leaves a trace there. It ends up in Japan. Very different approach to practice. Many centuries later, it climbs up over the Himalayas onto the Tibetan plateau and meets the deeply shamanistic culture of the indigenous Bompo. And we get this florid iconography of Tibetan Vajrayana Buddhism. So it's coming to the West, and it's going to be influenced, and there is going to be some kind of unique Western practice that has its roots in the absolutely fundamental foundations of the teachings, but is going to add a facet to the jewel. Now, my bias is very strong. Western Buddhism is going to be about awakening the body, because through the awakening of the body, and Buddha means awakening. What's so very asleep? What needs to be awakened? Well, we can pretty much see, if we turn our attention there, we can pretty much hear, but the shimmer, what I call the shimmer, that on every part of the body, down to the smallest cell, there is this vibratory, minute, such rapidly oscillating quality of sensations. Most of us, when it comes to the awareness of sensations and the giving of permission for the literally sensational presence of body, the shimmer throughout the entire body, we're asleep. We're asleep at the wheel. And it's, in a sense, we have to be asleep at the wheel to function in the quality of consciousness that passes as normal in the world at large. I always loved the story when Thich Nhat Hanh first came to the West and was asked, well, what do you think, about Western civilization? What are your observations? And the first thing he said was, lost in thought. We are a culture that is mostly lost in thought. Our center of gravity is very high. It's not rooted down, deep into, the middle region of the, the body, where, this natural manifestation of opening, can occur. So, we find this situation, and lost in thought, for me to be lost in thought, I have to shut down, put a blanketing covering over the felt shimmer. The felt shimmer. And what is very clear to me now, the more I explore these practices, it is the awakening of the felt shimmer that becomes the conduit or the link or the natural channel into these alternative dimensions of embodied consciousness available to every single human. I call it the Great Wide Open. Advaita Vedanta called it the non-dual state. Rumi calls it the consciousness of union. Buddhist schools would refer to nibbanic conditions. We are, I need to look at the note here. Let me just see. Oh, don't need to see that. These are our natural states that we want, that we crave, but that the consciousness that is lost in thought doesn't want to have anything to do with. It does not want this natural awakening, literal awakening to occur. Okay. I talk about sitting practices where, if you use a small amount of cannabis, what does cannabis do? It awakens the body. People talk about, I feel that buzz. Okay. I want to use these substances as sacraments for these practices, or for creativity, or for physical endeavor, or for for love play, using it as a sacrament for awakening and a transformational evolution. People who are really dead set against the use of these kinds of substances can very legitimately point to people that don't use them well. And this person has gotten into terrible trouble, and this person is just, off the charts, and people are needing to go to drug addiction. So this is obviously not what I'm talking about. I'm not into using these substances to get sleepier. I want these to be used in the context of these practices for which they are or can be a very legitimate sacrament, to aid in the process of awakening. Okay, the great Hindu god Shiva. Lots of apocryphal stories about him, but I'm pretty well convinced he was also an actual human that a lot of mythic overlay got put on top of later, okay? Because the stories about his early life, they're just too human. Ancient bards, if they're going to come up with a story of mystical god, would not use the stories of early Shiva. Shiva is the first person of legend and record to have used cannabis as a sacrament for his spiritual awakening. And what the legends down to this day in India about Shiva is that he would drink it as, they call it bhang, a mixture of bhang. I have a little reproduction of an old tanka of Shiva and Parvati on Mount Kailas preparing bhang. Shiva would evidently drink the bhang, and whoa, something would start happening, right? And he evidently would come to standing, and the legends say that energies would be awakened. in his body that caused his body to start making spontaneous movements. Spontaneous movements. And he was doing it. Something was just awakening and moving. This word, critical, moving. Out of which he brings the body-oriented practices of dance and yoga to the planet. Now, down to this present day, there are Shiva Babies, mostly in northern India, who, before they start their yoga and meditation practices, ritually invoke Shiva. How? By taking Shiva's sacrament. My wife Coco, as a young woman, did her yoga teacher training in Varanasi. Okay. And it was very intensive training. It was, I think, 4 months, 3 hours every morning, an hour and a half in the afternoon every day. And at the end of the 4 months, her teacher then said, okay, the next 4 months of your training, you go up into the Himalayas or the foothills of the Himalayas, get a little house and go into retreat and just start doing these practices. Now, she ended up in an area where there were a lot of wandering Shiva sadhus. And these would be people with not very much, maybe a loincloth and perhaps a begging bowl and a chilam to invoke Shiva through smoking cannabis. Not uncommonly, they would be wandering in the night and she'd wake up in the morning and 2 or 3 or 4 of them were on her porch. They'd sought shelter there. They were always very respectful to her and always invited her to join in the practices that began with the ritual invocation of Shiva, passing the chilam around, and then when the body is activated through the catalyzing effect of the herb, that's when they would start their practices, and they would just say they just go so much deeper. Now, this notion of Shiva getting high, standing up, and all of a sudden his body starts making spontaneous movements. Sound familiar? It does for many of us. That's certainly what happened to me. I even remember the day as in my 20s, I started, I guess, you can call it waking up. And I'd been getting into Rolfing, deep work on the body, and I was so out of touch with my body. It was very impactful, and I was starting to feel, there is this central line that Ida Rolf is talking about. That if we can play with this line, something happens. One day in the afternoon in the garden, I'm out in the garden, beautiful day. I'd smoked some cannabis. The energy awakened. And the next thing I knew, my body was moving. I was another typical guy. I would bob up and down at rock and roll shows. But that was about it. And all of a sudden, there is the body. And it's just starting to move. And I'm clearly not doing this. I'm just feeling these energies pushing and pulling me around. Now, I was enough open to and interested in these kinds of things that it was very easy for me just to keep letting go. And it felt very, very wonderful. It went on for, 20 minutes or half an hour. And then what I recall is that it started getting very extreme and intense, and energies through my head were coming out, and I can't even reproduce this, sort of like strange personas. I'm in my early 20s. I'm out in the country. This is before there's a continuum dance studio or yoga studio in every corner of every major city. And I got scared. And I went, I don't know. Maybe this isn't such a good thing to be letting go into. So I stopped it. 2 things happened. One, I said, so I can stop this at any time and come back to normal. The second thing that happened, normal felt awful because I realized I just had to reintroduce and recreate a great deal of tension into my body. So I said, okay, here goes nothing. And I let go. And probably about another 20 or 30 minutes it subsided, explored that all my life. And in many ways, I've brought that quality of letting go of the rigidity, the holding, right down onto the meditation cushion. Okay. Now, from a purely Buddhist perspective, no sacraments of any kind. So how have I squared this? Well, first of all, I am something of an anomaly. I understand that within the Buddhist world. I've sat with Vipassana teachers, Zen teachers, Vajrayana teachers, great gratitude, but I was never drawn to becoming a formal student or selecting a specific tradition or lineage. I was always attracted to the denominator common to all of them, which is the sitting posture. That sitting is about sitting. It's not as though I sit down and then begin the meditation. Okay. I sit down and just start letting go through the sitting posture, and the body starts awakening. Sensations start emerging. Oh, it's like stars coming out at night. Tensions emerge. To let them go. Breath starts shifting. It's very much of a letting go approach that I bring to the practice of sitting meditation. Again, so different from the very rigid, very held, very still postures that are so current in the retreat centers, the Buddhist centers, the ashrams. Now, here's something that I am actually quite clear of. The traditional orientation of a lot of Buddhist practice that's coming over from Asia, it's about, well, you sit down because you're going to sit down. But that's not the practice. The practice then is to focus. Use the mind like a laser, focus. In on an object of attention, object of observation. Perhaps the breath as it enters and leaves the nostrils, or the front belly wall that rises and falls, even in the stillest of bodies. So I'm going to bring my entire attention to focus on this very narrow object of observation. And remain focused as much as possible until I wake up and realize, whoa, I've gone off in a thought and I've lost focus. Focus, losing focus. And then what do? We bring it back. We refocus. These practices of great control, because it's always about coming back, coming back, coming back, coming back. They're very antithetical to this new orientation of somatic Dharma that's about awakening and letting go. My personal experience, and with many, many students, that if you are doing one of the traditional practices, and that's really what your meditation is about, cannabis doesn't work. Does not work. It's just going to get you more spaced out in your mind. You get tighter and tighter trying to refocus. However, if you bring a more somatic Shiva orientation with or without things like cannabis, remember, you can do these practices. The majority of people that I teach don't use substances. It's just that some of them do, and it's time for me to speak my truth. To let people know that you're okay. You're not demeaning yourself spiritually. Use them wisely, use them judiciously. But this somatic orientation is more about playing with the body. So what the Buddha says, sit with the spine erect and upright, relaxing everything. That's what Talopa says, the Mahamudra teacher. Do nothing but relax. Do nothing with the body but relax. That's the whole of the practice. Taking awareness through the body, relaxing. relaxing. And then going back to the Buddha, the culminating instruction on breathing. Yes, he starts by focusing, but then we get a little more sophisticated and refined in our awareness. And then in this altogether remarkable statement that frankly, very, very few Buddhist schools go anywhere near even attempting to explore. As you breathe in through the whole body. As you breathe out through the whole body. It's not just a focusing, narrowing in of attention on any one little part of the body. It's really a simultaneous awakening of body and breath. And somehow the awakened body and the liberated breath. Nothing could be more natural. Nothing could be more surrendered. We're giving up. You know what we're letting go of? We're letting go of our resistances to this most natural condition. And what we find for that, to breathe through the whole body, well, yeah, we had to relax through and awaken. So there's this presence of shimmer. Yeah, body looks pretty solid from the outside in. From the inside out, hardly. It's just shimmer, sensation, it's space. We have to awaken that because, as I often say, how can we possibly breathe through the whole body if we're unable, even to experience it? Remember, when we're lost in thought, it's either numb or some areas of pain that are trying to make their presence felt. And the second part of that, if you're going to breathe through the whole body, you've got to allow these continuous, subtle, sometimes not so subtle, spontaneous, amoeba-like motions to occur. They're very natural. It's not like you're doing them or anything. You just sit here, you let go, and it happens. So what we are bringing, as I said, the most radical piece, my insistence on letting go of the tension and the holding that so many of us as sitting meditators, we're just hanging on for dear life, to try to get through. And all too many people get crushed by doing that. It's not user-friendly. It's not a user-friendly approach to the body to be meditating in those ways. So I'm talking about an awakening through the body, which gets us out of lost in thought, okay? And then for the relaxation to keep occurring, for this really open dimension to stay kind of flowing, rather than, I had a great moment of relaxing, back in my head. Okay, I'm gonna relax, back in my head. No, we want it to continue over time, right? The motions have to be there. Now, remember, Shiva, through the ingestion of a cannabis drink, what did he find? He found that what that sacrament does, it helps the body to let go. And so there's a whole world of spontaneous movement and dance. I've spoken to a number of young adults in their 20s and 30s who have had absolutely bona fide, legitimate big openings at raves where their body was moving, just not stopping. And suddenly the motion takes over and they can't stop it. And in many cases, there were substances, either cannabis or MDMA, involved, catalyzing that, helping to support what their opening is. It just wants to occur. So it's natural. Now, what do I do? Okay. There are times, not all the time, but there are times, in the morning, I'm going to small amounts, very, very small amounts. For me, it's either one or two inhalations, right? And then I sit down. There's the awakening through the body. And essentially, I do nothing differently from what I do when I'm not using cannabis. And those of you who are attracted to the somatic practices, you're going to go way deep, whether you use things like this or not. Those of you who are attracted to the somatic practices, but also, cannabis or something like LSD, we'll talk about that in a second. They're allies in my life. I feel myself tall, balancing around the vertical, and taking my awareness through my body, not just registering sensation, but immediately, as soon as sensation is awakened, it's met with a gesture of relaxation. Relaxation through the entire body. And then, slowly but surely, I'll do practices. I start off with feeling the spine starting to lengthen and shorten on every inhalation, exhalation. Now look, the spine, it's not a Roman column. Individual vertebral bones, the joints, the spaces between the vertebrae in the spine, no different from joints anywhere in the body. They're there for one purpose and one purpose only. That's to move. Okay? All too often, you see people in Dharma halls. We see everybody walking down the street. We might as well have Greek columns for spines. That holding still locks us into the most superficial, limited, and limiting conditions of consciousness, of experience, of incarnation. In these teachings are formulas to awaken and evolve. I was a student in the 70s, the human potential movement. What is the ultimate potential of a human being? What would truly authentic being be like? These were my questions and my queries. And it's like a string of dominoes. You click one and I can't go look at that. I'm holding in my body. Oh, that doesn't work. That breath wants to open. So we just keep the practice of letting go. The spine lengthens, it shortens, then it starts undulating, actually. And again, this is not something, that I'm doing. It's just this letting go. Letting go, not control, not focus, not losing focus, bringing back focus. Letting go, it's more like getting in a kayak in a river. Just take it off. Okay, beautiful current. I love this. And then you're round a bend and there's a current that's going to scare you silly. That's what these practices are very much like. So it's one breath to the next, no place to go back to, just to keep surrendering and riding the awakened currents of soma, of liberated sensation. So the spine, it just starts undulating. I may periodically keep taking my awareness through my body, making sure I'm not losing the awakened feeling presence. Okay, taking it through the body, or I may do other simple exercises. One I love, I call it breathing in the 6 directions. Going down into the belly, like filling up a balloon. Feeling actual palpable motion, expansion outwards on the inhalation, retraction, the diaphragm. Our diaphragms are so tight. There's so many of us. Again, the consciousness that passes as normal, that's formed by this somatophobic bias of our culture. Okay? It's just the holding pattern. It's rigid, it's stiff. The diaphragm barely moves. But we can let the diaphragm go. Same thing. out to the sides, front and back. I think of it like the fluttering wings of a manta ray floating through the ocean. It's this horizontal structure coming up into the upper rib cage, up into the throat and the neck. Just like filling up a balloon, and the balloon gets larger. And actually, all the way up into the cranium. We work with this in some of our practices. Feeling the breath touch in there. That's essentially what I do. And those practices are no different whether I've invoked Shiva or not. What I've also been doing in the last little while is experimenting with a small amount, a constituted microdose of LSD, maybe 15 to 20 micrograms. 100 grams is, a trip where you're going to be kind of, starting, lying on your back and just going. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a microdose amount. And I usually wait for 45 minutes. When I feel it coming on, then I sit down and do my practices much the same as if I hadn't done anything. Personally, I'm finding it extremely helpful to help me move through some of the barriers, some of the resistances. We all have them, right? That keep us from just melting and dissolving into that place of presence, natural, essential, nature, the Rigpa, what I call these great wide open dimensions. Rumi says the place where the I disappears. Okay, everything is so let go. There isn't any longer this intermediary I that everything has to get referred back to, and who is terrified most of the time. Because the I knows that its hold on life itself, let alone on this physical body, while the body is alive, is tenuous. And there's this letting go that can occur. And from where I sit, unattended, if you like, this is our birthright. This is our destiny. We're wanting to keep opening. The 2,500-year wisdom tradition of Buddhism is one of the most beautiful traditions, okay, of wisdom teaching, and it's all about going deep and experiencing what's actually going on way down in the center of our experience of being alive, this strange, spatial, amorphous, shimmering center, very different from the solid form of the physical world. Now, one of the things that I did, I thought I would share with you, because many people have queried me, okay, well, how do you square what you're doing with the Buddhist precepts? And the Buddhist precepts are wonderful. They're also couched in negative language. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do that, as though we're small children being told how to behave. My whole focus on what I'm sharing here today is for everybody to take personal responsibility for yourself and make your own decisions. It's certainly like that when you sit in this way, in this somatic way that's about letting go and not just about bringing back to a place of focus. It's certainly about letting go, and from moment to moment to moment, as you let go, you're the only, I was going to say captain of the ship, but that sounds too much like I'm focusing, losing focus, refocusing. You're the one that's on the floating raft, and you're the one who's going down the river, and the current is taking you, going through that rapids, and then coming out the other side. And these practices and with some of the strong breathing that we do as well, they turn you into your own therapist, because you let go, and whatever needs to come to the surface of awareness, maybe deep sadness, terror, rage, ecstasy, it's coming out of you and you're allowed to emerge, just as happened to me in the garden that day. The next thing I knew, it was happening to me. I wasn't, oh, I'm going to raise this arm, I'm going to do that. But it was just, the energies were just, and I yielded. Okay. So you just keep allowing. You just keep allowing. You just keep allowing. As I said, I do not promote I do not promote the use of any kind of substance. I encourage and promote you to take responsibility and make the decisions of what works and what doesn't work. So here, let me just go over these, because I think this is pertinence to what we're doing as well. I'm going to take a few minutes. So here's my revision of the 5 basic Buddhist precepts. Instead of don't harm living things, I'm saying honor life. The current of the life force is the lightning rod of enlightened consciousness. The awakened current, right? It brings our evolutionary potential right into the body and grounds it there. The life force is precious. So keep exploring and discovering ways to release and heal blockages to its current, which can be felt in your body as a palpable flow of sensations and energies, so it can move more freely through you. Understand how we're all part of a web of life force as vast as the universe, inextricably linked and connected. So honor this precious force in everyone and everything. This goes way beyond, for me, just the notion of don't hurt living things, don't take life. The next precept, don't take what isn't yours. How I translate that is be generous in all ways with others. And old Indian saying tells us that everything that's not given is lost. So keep giving of yourself in all ways and at all times. What am I getting at? Let the life force flow as freely as possible, the awakened life force, through the conduit of your body so that it can radiate outward and touch others. Listen for what others need, and when possible, give them what they need. Never be miserly with your radiance, nor dim it down. The next precept talks about don't engage in sexual misconduct. Okay, very important. Remain, be clean in your sexuality. Nobody gets a free pass on figuring out the energies of sexual impulse, okay? Our sexual energies are often the first overwhelmingly potent and magnetic forces we encounter in life that scream out to us to accommodate them. Remember, know that they're okay. No one can tell you how to be in your sexuality. You have to figure it out for yourself. You may be attracted to men, you may be attracted to women, you may be attracted to men and women. You may be monogamous and bond with a single partner for life. You may be polyamorous and be attracted to multiple partners. You may be naturally celibate and prefer to be with your own company and energy. The attractions may change. However your attractions manifest, be respectful in your sexual expression and exploration by treating and honoring your partner as well as yourself as a goddess or god. Here's something I feel very strongly about. Imposing celibacy on a young person, sometimes done in Buddhist worlds and Catholic worlds, is an unethical action. It can dam up the natural energies that need to flow freely through the body, and it deprives the young acolyte of the challenge so necessary for his or her spiritual growth to face these energies, feel them, respond to them, and learn how to be at peace with them on their journey through life. The fourth precept is don't lie. I briefly say, mean what you say. Say what you mean, speak with truth. Be as honest as you possibly can be in your use and choice of words. Let your word be law in the universe. The universe always hears the words from your mouth as truth. So be precise with your language and careful about what you say. Be as truthful to yourself as you are to others. It's okay to say no. If lying to evil honors life, let that lie be your truth. Truth is its own law. Now, it's the final precept that is really the only one that I get into conversations, sometimes heated, with Buddhists, because the final precept in the Buddhist Dharma is don't take intoxicants, don't take mind-altering substances. And here I'm talking about a Shiva orientation to practice where I grow those small amounts of cannabis. Personally, a little bit of very pure LSD. They're working for me. They may not work for you. They may work for you, but you're the only person that can make that determination. So how I've shifted that one around, I say put into your body only what feeds and nourishes your body and soul. Your body is your visible house of worship. Your soul is the permeating force that invisibly fills every cubic inch of that house. Listen to your inner voice and felt sense to tell you what you need to nourish your body and grow your soul, and put that into your mouth. Only you can make the decision as to what is healthy for your body and grows your soul. Remember to chew and swallow well. Differentiate between what grows your soul and what dulls your mind. And be honest with yourself about this. If something, anything, starts becoming a problem, let it go. If anything is felt to support you in your growth and opening, welcome it into your life. There's nothing wrong with putting any substance into your mouth, so long as it's not harming you or anyone else. If something, anything starts becoming a problem, let it go. In my 30s, I really did my best to be a good Buddhist boy. You know, short hair, and I'm sitting an hour twice a day. It was great. It was wonderful. And it got to a point that I wasn't happy. I remembered back into my earlier awakenings, and especially, I wasn't even using it for music in those days. And I realized, for me to be honest and truthful, I have to start bringing this back into my life. I did, I have, and obviously I wrote the book, so it's not as though I'm, people don't know that this is a lot of what my orientation is. There was a very interesting book, I think it came out in the 1990s, called Zigzag Zen. I'm wondering if any of you have seen that or heard about it. It was a fascinating book. It was conversations with Buddhist teachers about LSD, And there were a number of groups. There were some Westerners who were doing things like taking large amounts of LSD and sitting Zazen for 8 or 9 hours. Personally, I don't know how they did that, right? Then there were so many of the American teachers that, yes, those kinds of substances were very important to help awaken. No, I don't do them anymore. There were a couple of Asian teachers who'd never taken LSD. And their attitude was, oh, no, very bad. I want to be a force to give people permission to do what it feels to do. If something works, accept it. If it doesn't work, don't do it. If something, starts to work and eventually doesn't work, change it. And I would say that about drug use in the same way that I would say it about some of the very rigid techniques of the Dharma. I've talked to many practitioners about this. They go to their first Zen session or their first Vipassana retreat. So much opening. But then subsequent retreats, it starts feeling like they're having to fit themselves into a mold. Trust yourself. You are your own guru. You are your own therapist. If you really let go and just let the body and mind, what we call body and mind, unravel its kinks, soften its tensions, let go of the ruts. They get smoothed out. The other thing that I think about the entheogens, psychedelics in particular, and this can include man-made substances like MDMA, LSD, or natural herbs like psilocybin, or now substances like ayahuasca, that in addition to the revelations that can occur, they also really teach you how to let go. When you're in the midst of being strongly affected by one of these substances, it's like throwing a little baby into the pool. That baby learns how to swim really quick, right? And the same thing is true of some of the entheogenic substances. They can be so healing, so catalyzing, so wonderfully, but wonderfully healing. That's really what the word is. And for me, spiritual practice is about healing. It's about healing the body of its tensions and its unnecessary pains that are necessary to create the quality of consciousness where we're lost in thought. So we're not only coming out of that consciousness, we're simultaneously healing the body of its aches and pains, healing the what I call the primal contraction, that all the sadnesses or angers or terrors have been stored. We don't have to resist that anymore. We can let go. We can let go. And we find that that's what these substances do. Don't take my word for it. Look inside and make your own determinations and your own decisions about this. So I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity that it's time that this needs to be spoken about. And increasingly, I'm getting so many emails from people, well, I'm doing this, and what do you think? And I'm doing this. Oh, I met this delightful younger couple a while ago who lead ayahuasca journeys, and they're getting their participants to sit in the posture of meditation throughout the ceremony. There is a lot that's happening. We're living at a time where Dharma is coming to the West. What's happening in the West? Body is awakening because we're seeing not only in our culture, but within the current form, the orientation towards sitting practices of Buddhist meditation. There's still so much awakening that needs to happen through the body if we're going to relieve this consciousness that's lost in thought. Dharma is also coming to the West at a time of huge proliferation, shared information, shared experience of the exploration, the judicious, the responsible exploration of entheogenic substances to support the opening. I want to wish you all well and thank you. I'm going to turn this back over to Christopher. Christopher is one of the people who contacted me, and Christopher has been a student of mine. He's a meditation teacher and a workshop leader, very, very accomplished in his in his own right. And Christopher has asked me, would I be willing to come in on the last day of one of his, I believe it's a 3-day workshop. The first 2 days are going to be opening practices, establishing the posture, and come in and lead a session of exploring meditation with the use of cannabis. The time has come. I'm getting this from so many different places, and we'll probably do this myself. I guess my only 2 rules about this is that if you sign up, you're in a jurisdiction that the use of cannabis is legal and that you're of legal age in that jurisdiction where you can purchase the product. But I'm very much looking forward to this. A number of weeks ago, we did kind of a trial run of this with about 10 people from around the planet. It's pretty wonderful. So thank you for letting me speak my piece. And I'm going to turn everything back over to Christopher. So from my end, bye for now.
Thank you so much, Will. So as Will said, we've got a 3-day workshop coming up in March, and 26th through 28th. I want to share just a little bit in closing here about what we'll actually be doing. So those first 2 days, Will talked about somatic grounding practices. So there's really a difference in my personal experience between just doing a substance like cannabis in a recreational setting and having a foundation within which you can navigate and utilize that substance is sort of an ally to practice. There's a genuine foundation that you can develop in both Shiva and Buddhist practices. So we're going to be covering those. What that would look like in actual practice is we're going to be doing classic sitting practice. I'm going to be teaching the foundation practices as I've learned them from Will, leading up to and including the hollow bamboo meditation, which is a rather forceful breathing method in a sitting upright posture. Some of you see nodding heads, familiar. You maybe actually studied with Will for a while. It's quite profound in my own practice how those practices done, again, without any plant allies or psychedelics, allow processing and liberation of tension and even possibly past trauma deeply buried within the body to be released and liberated consciously. So you're still sitting in the witness position, you're still acting with agency, which can provide a foundation of safety. So the beginning practices that we would start with will be the sitting and laying down practices, if you've studied with Will before. Nice reminder and also group practice setting for those of you who haven't been exposed to these. And then they're also going to introduce some Shiva type practices, more on the feminine spectrum, that include movement and immersion into sensation. So both of these two backdrops are going to be strengthening our capacity to abide as consciousness or to abide as feeling awareness, and particularly entering into the very center of our subtle being in the heart center. So there's an intelligence of the body that does reside within the heart and the body itself, which is different from the thinking mind and the discursive pattern of continuous thoughts that we often associate with self. We'll get a good entrance point into that. And then when Will joins us on that 3rd day, and these practices are fun, by the way. I've been leading workshops for years online, so you're not going to be sitting in a lecture mode. I'm going to actively get you participating with the other participants. There'll be time for Q&A, and we should have a lot of fun and hopefully introduce you into what's really possible in this virtual realm of Zoom. I've been working this for years. When Will talked about our trial run with, there were a lot of my assistant team, and there were other practitioners who we've studied with Will personally in Costa Rica. We were all wowed by how well it worked through the Zoom format. And in addition, we had participants who were completely sober who were with that, and they experienced that contact high and a profound opening in consciousness, even though they didn't imbibe. So if we do want you to follow the law or take personal responsibility for how you would use any type of substance, we don't encourage any illegal activity, yet I guarantee you'll be able to get a very deep experience, even if you don't partake of any intoxicants. Now, in my own tradition, I learned meditation through Will and also through the Vajrayana. Reggie Ray was one of my key teachers. And in that tradition, there is a drinking practice. So within the tantric traditions, there are intoxicants used very consciously. This is first time that I was actually formally introduced to it was after a week-long Mahamudra intensive. So we'd been in silence. We've been practicing since 6 in the morning till late at night, probably 10 at night every day. And on that final day, we had been practicing through the morning. We kind of had fasted. And in the evening, we were given a full, tall glass of sake, about 8 ounces. And it was kind of consumed in like 3 big gulps consciously. We felt the flow of energy going through the body. And it was combined with the practice we've been sitting with for all week. And it was phenomenal. It was very similar to what Will is introducing here, although I personally come from a family tradition that abused alcohol. So alcohol had been a exit from somatic feeling. And it had actually been, in my experience personally, a kind of a numbing agent if it's particularly used habitually. There's something different with cannabis and some of the psychedelics. And I had not been able to really practice and find the benefit of cannabis. I tried it occasionally, and it became legalized even in Colorado. When I bought some, we tried it, and I just set it aside. It didn't seem to work for me, and I didn't understand how to work with what it was doing in my body. What it was doing was bringing more of that awareness of my tension. Actually, it was bringing more awareness of fear. It was bringing more awareness of all kinds of things that my body was trying to communicate to me. And I didn't have a workable structure or methods with how to conduct those profound energies. So the way that it's structured here, the way I've learned it from Will, the foundation of safety is first and foremost. That's what I'll be practicing. And I do it with all my students when I'm teaching. You can find a seat of safe being within your body. It particularly tends to reside in the lower belly and the dantian. And when we connect with that, and we learn how to modulate profound flows of energy or open to them within the sitting posture or the laying down posture, we come back into a deeper state of agency and genuine choice. And then you can work with some of the profound insights, sensations, even memories that arise, but they don't cling to us. We don't have to hang on to them. I've experienced a lot of past trauma. I had a very abusive childhood, and it's been liberated through these practices. I've had like just simple holotropic breathing in the past without a structure could be very re-traumatizing or could re-stimulate some profound fear. But what I've found with these practices, particularly the hollow bamboo upright posture, a similar level of sensory intensity might come back to the body, but the hands don't turn into sort of the lobster claw. You don't regress maybe into your infantile form. The undulating vertical spine, it smooths and brings it into a form of awareness that's more in tune with your adult mind and your present fullness of who you are. So I've been a complete convert to all this work. And you can also find more people talking about how psychedelics can also work in this range. Michael Pollan's book. I really have come to respect the work of Dr. Gabor Mate, if you've ever heard of him. He's doing a lot of work with psychedelics and some deep healing. And again, having a structure with which to work with these, not just willy-nilly kind of adding something to your body. The essential practices that we learn from both the Buddha practices and the Shiva practices bring us into a fullness of a human being, a being that knows how to sit within that core. Will is masterful at bringing students into what he talks about, the great wide open, which is a very real manifestation and experience of the Mahamudra state. So what I'd learned in the Vajrayana tradition, Will is teaching the same thing. It's unnameable. I really feel he kind of gets to the essence of what Tilopa was teaching. And so come, please join us. We'll have time for Q&As and such there as well. Again, I'll give you that link. The way you can find out more information is go to www.sunyata.info and look on events and workshops. And you can also email me or Will with any questions about what we'll be doing. We'd love to have you join us. It's going to be quite an experience. And I've been just continuing to receive gifts from what I've had from Will. That's my real joy to be able to pay this forward and hold a structure so that more people can be exposed to this work. Invite other people and friends who you feel would also be served by this. It's really going to be a fun, multitudinal set of practices. So you're not going to be sitting in front of your computer for 2-3 days. We're going to be mixing it up, and you should feel energized and served by the end of it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Will. Anything else you want to add to that, Will, in closing?
You know, the only thing that was coming up to me, like right at the end, what we're talking about, the opening to experimentation, the proverbial idea whose time has come. It's time for us now to, in a sense, step out from the shadows and just share what we're doing. That's the only way we learn about this as a community. So lots of love to everybody in this community. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. And we will have this video slightly edited, and we'll have it posted on YouTube on Will Johnson's YouTube page. So you'll also be able to find a recording of that. And then maybe if someone was interested, they could watch this themselves and get some more information about what the program will entail. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your weekend to join us. It's an honor to be able to help serve and further awakening of everyone and finding home in their bodies. Until then, we'll see you later. Bye.